Control U to control the hue. Oh my god, I've never realized. And now we're gonna get to the Patreon questions. Look at that. Ooh, wow. So much stuff on there. Wow. Amazing. Amazing. So, we're gonna cover today values. I'm gonna put that on the thing. I'm gonna write that down for more impact. So we have values, light, texture, sketching, colors. Thank you for the undo button. Oh, and for the UK peeps, I'm gonna put a small U here. You know? They're words, not questions. Alright. There you go. Now it's questions. First thing is values. Values. I have a black and white picture. So there's usually something you do when you start drawing, is divide in multiple value groups. If you do a study like that, you would do the middle value, that would be about here. And I'm just gonna put it down on the side. As you can see, it looks very dark on the white. Then we have the light value and the dark value. So it's like, okay, what's like in the shadow, what is facing the light, and what is in between. And from that you can go and do the study and put down shapes. Values are very important to get like a three-dimensional feeling and a feeling of depth. Because that was the original question. I always start with the middle value, so I'm picking the middle value and I'm just putting down the overall shape of everything. You can do it differently and just put down the shape of this value, but it's a little bit easier like this. This is now very rough. I'm not going to do the whole study. That would take the whole stream. And what you can do is then lock the layer. So everything you put on top of that will not go outside of the shape. So we're going to put down the darker value, wherever that is. Just see where are shadows, where are lights, and then we still have like, maybe I did a little bit too dark for the darkest, but you get the gist. And with the light value, you put down the light shapes and use a solid brush. This again is not accurate. This is just how I do stuff. So if you do work with shapes, how I do it, then you do this. However, for beginners, this is just about value and not about the progress or the process of the stuff. So as a beginner, you would probably want to start with a rough sketch of the shape of the face. And go from there. Just look, okay, where are the eyes? Where's the nose? Where's the mouth? And do it like this to be more accurate. And you can do geometric shapes. I'm not going to go into detail because the question was about value. You start out with 3 values. And then you can pick one of them and activate the opacity thing. So it's pressure, opacity, and you can go over the edges. But yeah, that's how you get soft edges. Value is incredibly important to get a feeling of depth into the painting. So you can go from very, very dark to very, very bright, and you should. And there's like graphs and lines and stuff that you can look at in Photoshop that will tell you if the picture is too bright or too dark, or how like the values are contributed, but I never do that. I just go with my feeling. Okay, that was that. I hope that helped. Next thing is light. Light. So the question was soft light or hard light? So mostly it's not if the light is hard or soft. It's about the volumes on the face that make the shadows hard or soft. So learn the shapes of the face. It has volumes. And they're sometimes sharp and sometimes soft. Where am I? There I am. So here you can see the direct light is cut off here, but that's just because something's in the way. That doesn't have anything to do with our face. That is a hard edge because it's a direct shadow of something else. If that is the case, then the shadow is hard. Like the shadow of the nose here. If something is covering the light, then the shadow is hard. If it's just volumes, then the shadow is soft. As you can see on the cheek, it goes from light to dark in a gradient. And there's also like just hard shapes on the face that will give you a block of shadow, like under the nose, or here. That's normally a hard shadow as well on this side, and then it graduates out. You can learn that with looking at faces. Also, here is a gradient, you know. Always think of what's facing the light. Is anything blocking the light? Like here? Or also the hand would block the direct light. But in general, the shapes are round on the face, roundish like the cheeks. And if there's any hard edges, like also the creases or anything, then the shadow is a little bit harder. But it's not about if the light is hard or soft. It's about the shape of things. And I'm using faces because I know faces. I don't know anything else. If the light is covered by something, then the shadow is hard, has a hard edge. And if it's just volumes, like round volumes that the face has, then it's a graduate. But it's not if the light is hard or soft. Okay, next thing. We have sketches. Wait, I need to kringle it. I know you don't say it like that, but we do. Oh no, we have texture. And then we have sketching. Whoopsie. How important is texture? It is important for the finish. It's not important for starting. Some people work with just texture brushes and they have a more painterly feel to it. I have this as an example and this as an example. That has a very painterly look because I painted those with texture brushes right from the start. If your process is going from rough to soft, then you can start off with texture brushes, but it's more like painting on canvas with very big brushes first, and then you go into more and more detail. So this I painted with textures at the end. You start off with rough shapes with just the hard brush, and you go into more and more detail with just the hard brush and nothing else. Maybe a little bit of airbrush to soften out, or soft brush to soften out the edges. But you can still see how I worked with just the hard brush and opacity. This is all very rough. And here for the finishing, for the crying thing, I used the texture brush. Because I don't have to like put shadow or light or something on there. I just used a different layer style. I used multiply, I think, for this. So for texture, you can use them as like finishing things to make it look more detailed. Or like texture, a little bit of texture strokes on the fabric. And I use hair brushes, so for hairs to not be that much effort, I use hair brushes because they make things easier. Right, so texture only for finishing touches if you start out as an artist. However, you can do it differently. It's just you have to be very, very confident with the basics if you start out with just textures. Okay, that was it for texture. I hope that helped. So texture, finishing touches. It's very important to make it look finished. However, use with caution. You don't want to get too much texture on it. Put texture only where the focal point is. So where you want the people to look at with just normally the face, especially for a portrait. But every painting has a focal point. Not everything should be the same. You know, you don't want people to not know where to look in your painting. There's composition rules and whatever, but that's not the topic today. Sketching. That's gonna be a very short topic, so sketching is quite important. The question was, are 60-second sketches worth it? Should I do 1-minute sketches? And the answer is yes, please. Do it! Those are my sketches I found on my PC. I did a torso study at some point. Those are not 1 minute. Those are like 5 minutes, I think. For some reason, I didn't find my 1-minute gesture drawings. But 1 minute is the perfect amount for just gestures. Just do gestures. 1 minute after a minute after a minute. Which is what helps you figuring out what is important. Which shapes are important on the people, on the gestures. What is the gesture? You can exaggerate gestures, like how is the body moving? That is why you do gesture drawings, to figure out what can I do with my body? Like what seems logical? What is the flow? Which flow looks good? Which curves look good, you know? And I'm not talking about hips and boobas and booties. I'm talking about the movement itself. Also, every 1 minute study, it doesn't need to be gesture drawings. It can be faces, it can be hands, whatever. But your brain kind of figures out what is important if you just do 1 minute of each drawing. You can also do 5-minute sketches and just go more and more into detail. You can also start off with 5-minute sketches. Take your time to figure out the more important things and then go back to 1 minute and try it quicker. That covers the question about sketches. Is 1 minute sketches worth it? Yes. The answer is definitely yes. Next and last question, we had colors. That's gonna be a little bit longer, I think. So for colors, I'm gonna go back to this. I know that there's a hair strands from before. I'm gonna open up a color wheel. Let me just get that real quick. And I'm gonna put that here so you can see it better. Can I make that bigger? Wow, look at that. Wow. Wow. Okay. We're gonna use the color picker for this so you guys see. So this is the color wheel with all the colors of the light. And complementary colors are the colors that are on the opposite. So for example, red and turquoise. And yellow and bluish and stuff like that. So those colors work well together. And for some reason, I did blue, which is very, very desaturated and dark. And I did yellow, orange. So this is complementary and works really well. Orange and blue is one of the best combined complementary colors that you can do. Like, in my opinion, it always looks very, very nice because you have the cold of the blue and the warm of the orange. And if you combine warm and cold, it always is this nice balance. This nice balance. And almost every drawing has a cold section or cold color and a warm color. And every color can be cold and warm. It depends on the other colors that are in the piece. So another important part is focus on one color that is dominant and one color, if you do complementary, the other color is desaturated. So one color is taking your focus and that color should be in the focal point. But on the color wheel, there's so many different shades of the colors and you can always just go to the exact opposite and then have the complementary. So those are complementaries. There's other color combinations that work well, which are triangles. And there we are with blue, yellow, and red. Those are typical like superhero colors and stuff. So you can also work in triangles, which I did with this one. This magenta is very reddish. So it's like here, it's more to the red than to the purple. We have the teal. And we have the green. And as you can see, that built a perfect triangle on my color wheel. And those colors in a triangle work well together as well. But beware that you pick one that stands out. The one color that's very saturated for me is the magenta, close to the focal point. Everything else is a bit desaturated. You can see the saturation is here, and if you go closer to this point of the triangle, you have the most saturation. So close to focal point, more saturation. Then you have the background, which is a bit less saturated. I made it more saturated at the corners, but in the middle, it's very, very light. So there's a contrast between the dominant color and the background color to create value contrast. One part is dark, one part is light. That way you create contrast, and that's important for values. Very, very important. So you always want to have light and dark beside each other if it's like an edge of something. And I also have something completely different. Two complementary colors mixed into the same piece. So we have the yellow and we have the teal-ish, blue, teal. That is complementary. It's mixing a little bit with the hues on the hair, but is pretty much blue and yellow, which is kind of complementary. Or teal and yellow, you know, kind of. Doesn't always have to be exactly complementary. And we have the red and the green with the face and the background. This color combination just happened. I started with brown hair on this. I remember that. I started with brown hair and I felt something is missing. And at the very end, I changed it to blue or teal. And I was like, this is perfect. I'll take it. And another thing about colors, which I implemented in this piece, repeat the colors. So you can put the green of the background into the eyes. You can put the yellow of the flowers into the dress. This way it makes it more... it's more harmony. And also the skull is very warm and yellowish. Yellow and red. So we have like both this orangey. So yeah. As you can see, yellow is the most saturated. And it frames the focal point. The focal point is the face and the skull. And it frames it like it's all the way around pretty much. The background is very desaturated because it's not important. You know, we want to focus on the piece. And we have a very saturated green, yellow green in the eyes. And we have a lot of texture. There we're gonna go back to texture in the skull, which is also like one of the focal points. We have very little texture and contrast down here because we want to focus on the face. So you also want to have very big contrast differences or value differences at the focal point because that's where people look. Because it's more interesting. As are bright colors, very saturated colors. The second most saturated is the hair. And then we have the skin and the background at last. Yeah. But also just try out what works together. And you never know. Maybe you find some color combination that you really love. Play around with different colors. You can also have one layer for the clothes, for example, one layer for the skin. And you can change the color easily and see what works well. One layer for the hair. Just change the hair color. Control U. And you have hue and saturation, and then you can play around with the whole thing. I could change everything. And that would still look kind of good, but... Look, like, even that looks good. Change the hue of things. Yeah, we have green and purple, which also works very, very well together. Maybe not this. But yeah, you can see what I'm, like, getting at. Control U to control the hue. Oh my god, I've never realized. You're so smart. But yeah, that was the 5 questions of today.